Make that 7 in a row for Purdue men's basketball. The Boilermakers are rolling. Take care of the West Coast with Washington and now beating the number 13 team in the country at their house. Whose house? Our house. The Boilers in the Stands post-game show starts right now. Welcome back to the Boilers in the Stands post-game show as the Purdue Boilermakers win a big game on the road, taking down the Oregon Ducks in a absolute rock fight to make it 7 in a row as we start out the 2025 year and talked about this schedule, being of the utmost importance to get off to a hot start as we start to get into the depths of Big Ten play. The Purdue Boilermakers have taken absolute advantage of that and now take down a really good team at their house as we welcome the West Coast to the Big Ten with some Purdue faithful in the stands for both Washington and Oregon wins here this week. I am your host, Greg Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, is Joe Jackson and Kraig Bowers as we get into our instant reactions. You know, guys, I'll keep it short and sweet. I mean, there's a lot of things that just make this impressive to show the resiliency in an ugly start to a game where, the buckets aren't falling easily. You're fighting for rebounds, trying to scratch and claw to stay in this game any way you possibly can. And then you eventually take control of it. But as much as we, consistently talk about the offense, on this show, the defense has just been so impressive here, through this stretch. And when you talk about, obviously the rebounding prowess of and Trey Kaufman-Renn just fighting, even getting mauled to start that game. You look at the young guys like Jakari Harris and CJ Cox, who are just so good at, covering the entire court end to end and being able to get back up the court and stop the dribble when they do that. Braden Smith consistently coming around the corner on a post, trying to pick a guy's pocket. And then in one of the most pivotal moments in the game where it looks like he has a mismatch down low, he jumps in front of the pass. Time and again, you're seeing guys making the big play defensively here through this 7-game winning streak. So as much as we talk about some of the big buckets, some of the big plays offensively, all the great play calls that Matt Painter draws up, these guys are really dialed in defensively, and that's something that I had a big takeaway from today's game. So I am just excited to see where this team is going, but man, they're really climbing and hit their crescendo today in a big win against Oregon.
Yeah, this to me, I was never fully out on Purdue, but there was the stretch there. I figured things would look better after the Auburn game. That stretch was so tough, but my thought at that point was okay, this is a team that's, maybe not top tier of the Big Ten. They're that second tier, going to make the tournament. No concerns about that. But they may just not have that top end level. This is the game that I think has kind of convinced me, no, Purdue absolutely is as good as any team in the Big Ten. Defense has been the weakness for most of the year. They've obviously turned that around against weaker competition. And it was what won them the game today. Defense and rebounding. And then you get some timely shot making. This is the game where I'm oh yeah, no, they are every bit going to compete for, once again, another Big Ten title. And this is imagine a month ago saying, hey, Purdue's going to win a road game while shooting 34% from the field, 16% from three, but they win it because of defense and rebounding and forcing turnovers. Nobody would have believed me. Nobody would have believed that at all. And that's where we're at right now against a good offense too. It's not like Oregon at this point is right there. They're a much better offense than any offense that Purdue has played during the stretch. It didn't matter. Purdue's game plan is still working.
Yeah, and I mean, to that point, right? Oregon is 19th in Kenpom in offensive efficiency. And there were a lot of questions coming in of like, is this defensive transformation real, or has it just been a matter of who they're playing? And a sample size of one top 20 Kenpom offense isn't enough to like really throw your stake in the ground about that and plant your flag. But the results today were pretty darn impressive. They hold Oregon to their season low by 10 points. They hadn't scored less than 68 points at any point in time in this year. And to your point, I almost called you Caleb first, Joe. To your point, Joe, if you would just glance at the box score, you didn't watch this game, you glance at the box score, you see Lawyer goes 2 for 9, Smith goes 5 for 15, TKR goes 7 for 20. And then you look at those team percentages that you talked about, you say, how in the world did they win? Well, they end up +4 in the turnover margin in terms of forcing 10 or 4 more turnovers. They end up +13 at the free throw line in terms of attempts taken. They end up +7 in offensive rebounds and +12 in second chance points. That's just an impressive, gritty win. And shooting hasn't traveled right. In the last 3 road games now, they've shot 17%, 21%, and 17%. But defense and rebounding always travels. And if this team has turned a corner in that regard, that's going to just make them much more competitive in every road game in the Big Ten.
Well, and when you talk about the free throws, you look at a guy like Kaufman-Renn, who was having trouble finishing around the rim, but wasn't having trouble finishing at the free throw line. And they said on the broadcast, he's shooting 57% from the free throw line on the season. And, help me out, Stephen Bardo said, that his form looks right, that that tells him that's more about confidence when a guy has good form but doesn't have a good percentage at the free throw line. Well, today, did he end up missing one? Because at one point he was 8 for 8. So 9 and 9 on the game. And some of those were just such huge moments, to knock down free throws, to keep that lead extended there. And he had to work hard all day long. So when you talk about fatigue factor, not just a confidence factor being part of, free throw percentage, sometimes taking a dip for bigs, he was doing everything he possibly could there. And I just, like I said, I think we talked, we'll get more into defensive stuff. And if Joe, you have anything from the chalkboard that can stand out to explain kind of, this defensive surge, I'd love to hear it. But the other thing that I really enjoy watching is the 2-man game between Braden Smith and Kaufman-Renn. And it is very much the same way that Zach Edey and Braden Smith played off of each other in a lot of ways, where Braden will navigate, come back around a pick, come back around a loose, screen wall by the big, and just wait for his big to kind of get established where he needs to be around the rim. And then he just kind of does this drop-off pass where more times than not, whatever big he's dropping it off to is in really good position to make a play. And I just enjoy the patience that both guys show as they try to operate and maneuver, that while there's heavy traffic going on. And it's been a breath of fresh air to kind of watch that part of Braden's game stay here, even though you don't have, the same kind of dominance of Zach Edey. They're still going to their bread and butter in that regard.
Yeah, you still are just going to put the ball in your best player's hands, and they did not shoot well tonight, combined 12 of 35, but you live with it because of how good they are. Braden Smith, right, it wasn't a great game, but he still has 15 points. He still has 7 assists. TKR, not a great game efficiency-wise from the floor, still ends up with 23 points in large part because of 99 free throws. But the bigger thing maybe even was just the rebounding, 11 rebounds for TKR, 6 of them offensive. And so you're getting it wasn't the best process night offensively for Purdue. Don't get me wrong there, but it wasn't. I don't think there was Purdue is just having to take bad shot after bad shots. They miss a few that they should make. I do think Oregon also played pretty good defense, especially on TKR on the post. But then they get those rebounds, and you can win in multiple ways now. You get enough contributions from everybody else too, and I know a lot of it is from the free throw line, but Heidi has 9, Harris has 5, Fletch, he didn't have a great game, still puts up 6. You still get enough, but everything goes through Braden and TKR as it should.
And even a couple of guys that don't really put much on the box score. I mean, Jakari ends up with 5, all of them at the free throw line. CJ puts up 0, but I thought CJ was incredible in his time in the game on Shellstead. And it really looked to me like Painter was trying to keep a guy fresh on him. Colvin, Harris, and Cox all play exactly 15 minutes this game. And it just felt like he was trying to keep those guys rotating to keep them fresh and try to shut down their star player. And I mean, even with zeros, like I thought CJ really, really impacted the game. He gets that, tie
up on Shellstead.
He gets that tie up, but right before that tie up, he gets switched on to Angel. And he was guarding Angel, and they were trying to feed it to Angel, and he was incredible. He gets hit in the head on that, was incredible in that little stand defensively, and then ties up Shellstead on the next trip down. He got switched off of him, but comes weak side and ties him up. I just thought it was a complete win all the way around in terms of guys contributing. Kind of like we've said multiple times, nobody's shining offensively, but man, everybody did everything else well today.
Yeah, no question about it. So a big win here for the Purdue Boilermakers as they make it 7 in a row here. As we're starting to get in the heart of Big Ten play, the Purdue Boilermakers will return back to Mackey Arena. You might even see my face at a gymnasium near you here this week. Don't want to jinx it yet, but it's in the plans. Obviously the basketball vibes are flowing now, and we're in the thick of it, and it's been a lot of fun to watch this team start to go on a run and to go from, it's like a stair step, right? These teams that they've beaten are teams that, they should beat, right? Teams that have given them problems in the past, so you don't take them for granted, and we've certainly emphasized just the way they've beaten some of these teams, really shellacking a couple of them by 20 points plus. But then you go on the road here to end this road trip against, one of the top teams in the country at their house and beat them when you didn't even have your fastball today. You didn't even play your best game. It's just it's a lot of fun, and it makes you excited for how this season, can continue on and get to the end of the Big Ten season and into March Madness. So hit that like button while you're hanging out here on the Boilers in the Stands post-game show while you're hanging out with us on a Saturday afternoon as NFL playoffs are starting to get underway here. So we appreciate y'all hanging out with us. Yeah, I know. Well, we always keep our eye on all the sports. I mean, Purdue women's basketball are on the West Coast as well. They're playing at Washington right now. So there's a lot of stuff. And so for you people, you fine people, in our chat and watching us and taking your time to hang out with us this weekend, we appreciate you. So hit the like button, subscribe. If you want to throw a super chat in there, we'll make sure to immediately get it up and get your question in. We appreciate all support to the program. Jimmy Pepper adds in, Purdue is a top 20 team on Kenpom for defensive efficiency. And Kraig, you talked about this. I think on the last postgame show, they were up, a few weeks ago, how much ground it. All right.
We were wrong. The lowest was 71. It wasn't in the 90s, but still they
huge
were 30
jump.
I think they were 37th coming into the game today, if I remember right. So
explain to viewers, right? Explain to viewers just how hard that is to make that kind of a jump at this point in the season. It's one thing to make that kind of jump, in November, but when you're in January to make that kind of jump, that's got to be pretty hard, right?
Yes and no. Yes, because you still have to improve defensively. The no part is there's a huge gap between 1 and 10. After that, it does the jumps are much closer, but it is still very impressive to get from where they were at to a top 20 defense. You cannot take that away from them at this point because, right? I'll look now. They're per Kenpom 95 point. This is adjusted defensive rating, so it's not a true point rating. Generally, a defensive rating would be how many points you give up per 100 possessions is how these things work. Right now, they're at 95.5. 71 we're saying they was 100.7. So that's that is it's still a big jump to go from 71 to 20. That's a 5 points per 100 possession difference. That's maybe doesn't sound big. That is really, really that is pretty large. It's pretty hard to overcome at times, especially just with how Purdue is reeling. And we know we all expected, I think, on this podcast for Purdue to at least bounce back in some capacity, but the lineup changes just worked. First has been awesome. And you can just see he brings a complete complete different effort defensively, but it's also just what Purdue has done. And we've broken it down some with forcing turnovers, being more active in passing lanes. They're playing a closer style to what Nebraska does, is really what they're doing at this point. It isn't as egregious, but they are willing to give up threes. They are going to try to take away the interior and make you work there and force turnovers in the process. And I mean, I can look it up, but this has to be since this is the most turnovers Purdue has forced since the 2020 year. And that was what Nogel and Eric Hunter was the backcourt.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course Sasha was obviously forcing.
He was leading that defensive charge on the perimeter.
I'm looking right now. He had the third highest steal percentage on that team.
You're damn right he did, Joe. Thank you.
No, he deserves his flowers.
Yeah, but no, to that point, Joe, and I put it up right at the end of the game. Well, actually, when they hit the higher than their season average. So I think there was like 7 or 8 minutes left in the game. This is now 6 out of 7 games in a row that Purdue has forced a team over their average on turnovers for the season. Prior to this 7-game stretch, they'd only done that 3 times in the other 12 games. So it's been a major switch. And I do think First needs the most credit in that. I also think, in the offseason, Matt Painter was talking about CJ and Jakari being 2 of the best defenders he's brought into Purdue in a long time. And there were times people questioned that, right? Because while they were really good on ball, they were both struggling at times just navigating through screens. And I think they both have gotten exponentially better at that as the season's progressed. And I mean, I don't know. Miles lost Shellstead a couple of times out there, but I thought CJ and Jakari were really, really dang good on him.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the way these guys recover is impressive. TKR even at one point had a nice recovery as he was getting beat to the rim, forced to miss. I think that was in the first half. I need to start taking notes, I think is what I need to do, because there's so many moments in games where I'm like, I'm going to bring that up. And then I don't take any notes. And then I try to bring it up here. And I'm not as smart as Joe as far as keeping this information locked in my head. But it is so refreshing to watch how good these guys recover. And when you talk about, Joe, this Nebraska style where we're going to let teams take threes, and Jordan Cornette brought it up during the halftime report for NBC. And he said that he felt like Oregon was settling way too much for threes and taking some ill-advised ones where they're a few feet back from the three-point line. And I agree. Maybe Purdue was closing those options off on the inside, but it just felt like they were playing right into Purdue's hands. And then, yes, at the end of the game, all of a sudden they made things interesting with like 2 minutes to go, hit a couple threes. But even then, once you got it down to the very end and you might have a chance, then they come down and force another 3 at the very end that pretty much sealed the game. So to me, they were ice cold, from beyond the arc, and Purdue was just like, go ahead, keep shooting them. Let's see. And at one point they completely left the guy, and what was it? Yeah, and he didn't know what to, I knew he was going to miss it because he didn't want any part of it. And then all of a sudden he's like, all right, I guess I'll take this. And you knew he was going to brick it after everything they'd already gone through that day.
Yeah, and this is getting a little off topic. Bamba's shooting woes this year are just weird. He's shooting 26% from 3 now this year. He is a 5th-year senior. He has played at like a power conference level all 4 years. He has never shot below 36% from 3 in any year. And this year is just off. He's 2 of 17 now in conference play. But yeah, Purdue is willing to give up 3-point attempts, and they also do a good job for the most part of giving them up to the right people, right? Shellstead and Biddle fire him up. I mean, we can pull up the stats here, and this will be my check to see if the stats are even big enough. It's okay. Oh no, this one. Oregon took 29 threes. They took 21 twos. And it wasn't like Oregon got to the foul line an insane amount, right? Because sometimes you can take more threes than twos because you shoot 45 free throws or something like that.
Right.
They take 17. It's not like they took none, but it's the defensive game plan now. It's really what it's become. Even right with First is a good rim protector. He's still not like an elite rim protector. He's at his best being able to be in space, causing havoc out on the perimeter, walling up some. And so Purdue basically has been like, okay, Daniel Jacobson got hurt. Will Berg hasn't emerged at this point. those were probably the two best cases for a true rim protector. And so Painters and company and Lusk deserves credit for sure on the defensive end too. They're just like, all right, we don't have that. Let's figure out a different way to try to protect the rim. And you're just starting to see it work out a little bit better. And teams still shoot a good. They're turning into a team where teams shoot well at the rim against Purdue, but they just don't take a lot of shots there.
Did they end up with more turnovers than field goals in the second half? Because I know they brought that up on the broadcast with probably like 5-6 minutes to go still in the game. I don't know if
they had 10 field goals and 9 turnovers.
That's incredible. I mean, that's great job by Purdue, and it just shows you the lack of emphasis on trying to get the right kind of shots for Oregon as well.
Yeah, exactly. And like this is just an impressive win. It really was. Like, and I do think there's a little bit of poor shot variance for both sides. But I do think it's for both sides. So it kind of cancels out where if they play this game again, Purdue probably wins maybe closer to like 72-65 type, but Purdue did what they needed to do. I have it up on the board if we want to go to it, kind of the defensive style change that Purdue has gone to, if we want to go to that.
Yeah, let's do it. Somebody was calling for the board a minute ago, so let's do it. Let's do it.
All
Tammy
right, so
Wallen, you got your wish. The board.
There we go. So Purdue on defense here, they're the O's. And so basically what's going on is you'll see something like this. So high pick and roll. If it's first, he's going to hedge. If it's TKR, he's going to be more in drop coverage. That part's a little less relevant, although first hedging is somewhat relevant. Basically what they're doing is say this is like drop, right? And so big's going here. If this is happening, you have your defender chasing. You're going to have here. This defender is going to play more here. And then this defender like slides over more. And so now your defense is set up more like this. And so you're willing to give that skip pass because two things. One, you're trusting your defenders here to be able to force the ball handler back this way a little bit, right? You don't want him to just be able to do this because that's when issues can happen. You can do this so that way if that skip pass comes, you can rotate out. Or if he does happen, now you have multiple guys here. If this is first and this is TKR might try to step up, right? And then help on this drive. You can rotate over here and then just be still fine and just know that you're going to give up a couple more 3-point attempts. It is just going to happen. That is part of what the defense wants to do. But then you see more too, like say, right, Biddle, Brandon Angel, KJ Evans for Oregon, all three post players. You'll see here, even if it's a guard, right? How many times did Braden Smith fight around the post? I know, Kraig, you mentioned CJ Cox did once or twice. Like, it doesn't matter who this guy is. He's, especially if it's a guard, they're going to front now more. And so if the ball's here, right, say it's, I don't know, something like that. That's a pretty normal alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Help in the gap here. Help in the gap here. This defender is showing backside help here. And maybe it's more like in this spot. But so that way, if this pass does come, they're forced baseline. You still have the help here. He's going to fill this gap. He's going to fill this gap. He's going to fill this gap. And so even if it gets in the post, right, and you have this massive size disadvantage down low, it's going to look something like this. You play up in the gaps, and then you just have to rotate out quickly. And I think the other thing that's been important for this Purdue defense is that those rotations have been good for the most part. They have been there for the most part. And is it absolutely perfect? No. Like there's still probably some steps Purdue can take defensively, but that's the scheme. If the ball gets in the post, force baseline. And what that also allows is now Purdue can switch pretty much everything that they want on the perimeter. So now you're not giving up as many advantages during like pick and rolls and things like that, especially if it's guard to guard or guard to a big where you're comfortable switching. So like first, he can switch out onto the perimeter. You're not as concerned because you have that backside help. With that said, I want to reiterate, like there are games you are just going to give up more threes. It is going to happen. I don't know if we've necessarily seen that yet. I'm going to quickly check recent 3-point percentages. I mean, Washington went 9 of 20, but a lot of that was Osibor. Besides that, though, no team in this stretch has shot over 30% from three. So they're still doing a good job of forcing threes, but also contesting. And that's a big part of how you jump to from 71 to 20 defensively.
Yep. And you saw a few times on when they tried to skip pass to avoid the rotation, Braden Smith baited them and picked that one off. And then they had another one where they just threw it right into his lap. because those aren't easy passes to make to begin with. But you're right. There was a point in the second half where I felt like they got him to switch like 2 or 3 times. And like all of a sudden it felt like they had like 3 matches across the board and they still didn't take advantage of it. I think they jacked up a 3. And that was the point where Bardo was complaining to his, to the play-by-play guy saying like, how did they not, get it into the big there, and sometimes it's baffling. And so, yeah, I think the defensive rotations and the ability to switch and the ability that these guards have to play fast and under control and really get into guys. CJ Cox, Sha'Carri Harris have just done a fantastic job to add to this defensive attack, and it's showing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And my favorite play of the game, I know we did this last time, and it's a little early for it, but my favorite play of the game.
As long as you don't steal mine, you can have your favorite play of the game first.
My favorite, well, it's funny that you say first. My favorite play of the entire game is first get switched on to Shellstad on the perimeter. And I forget, he either forced him into dribbling the ball out of bounds or forced him into a travel. But like, man, that just shows Caleb's versatility and what he's been able to bring in terms of how he impacts the game defensively. Ended up having a better offensive game as it went on. He got 2 buckets in the second half, but just what he does in general defensively and his versatility and also just banging away. He only got 3 rebounds, but he affected way more that other people got with his presence fighting for rebounds.
No question about it. My play of the game, I think I might have mentioned it in my opening rant, but Braden Smith, a mismatch down low. It's a 4-point game. Oregon is hanging around, has a chance to maybe flip the momentum. They try to get it into him, and he's deep underneath the basket, and Braden is smart enough to jump in front of it. And it's kind of one of those, I'm going to make this move, and if the ball goes over my head, so be it. But, you're not going to get me. You're not posting me up. And so he gets in front of it and steals the basketball. And that was just such a big turn of momentum there. And Braden is just such a fighter in so many ways. And you saw at one point him diving on the floor for the loose ball and, coming around a corner, picking the big man's pocket in the first half. But that was, to me, the biggest play of the game was that moment, because they could have cut it to 2. And instead, Braden Smith gets the steal underneath the basket.
I think mine, I have a play drawn up that I really like that we can go to at some point.
Go to it.
Well, my favorite, I think the play that stands out to me, and I forget the exact time. I know it's probably 3 to 4 minutes left. Purdue up 4, 6, somewhere in that range. It's Braden gets the pick and roll, drives downhill, floater, or a little floater pull up thing, misses, and TKR gets the putback dunk.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think that just kind of epitomized the effort today of like, hey, you're getting good looks. They aren't falling, but it doesn't matter because you're TKR, especially just a monster on the glass, 6 offensive rebounds. I don't know how many second chance points he had on his own, probably close to double digits. So that play specifically was just like a miss there. Oregon goes the other way. They could easily just like drill a 3 or something because Jackson Shellstad could do that at any point. Felt like a pretty big swing to me.
No question. I mean, you had that one and then Braden coming around the corner and knocking that bunny down when they really hadn't been falling all game. And those 2 were just like the moment in the game where like the Ducks, they're trying to like will this game into overtime. Their fans thinking that, and Purdue just showed their moxie at that point. They're everything they've learned, their experience, they really don't blink in these moments. They don't look as nervous as we've seen some Purdue teams in the past. I think the one moment where Miles turned the ball over was kind of one of those peaks of old Boilers times where they used to do that, and have some meltdowns where they let guys back in. You saw Painter talk to Miles about it. I think he just was trying to get Braden so Braden could go to the free. He didn't want to go to the free throw line. I think he's like, Braden, you take this, and Braden was calling for it, but he should have held on to it for sure. But winning plays all the way around.
Why was Miles in the game in that situation? That was my like right when that happened. I was like, why is he?
Well, all the
No,
way
it
to
wasn't.
the end. I mean, at
Not a
one
respect
point
defense.
at one point out of a timeout with like 4 minutes ago, they drew up the curl on the baseline shot for him. He almost knocked it down. It rimmed out, but you saw Painter leaving him in there for big minutes.
They had pressed a little bit at that point already. I think it was like maybe the third time that they'd been able to set up the press. And I think you had, because Lawyer wasn't in the game either. Right after that turnover, he subs Lawyer in.
It was
like
Jakari,
Braden, and Miles. And I don't know. That scared me, man.
That's where they were going offense defense down the stretch with Jakari and Colvin, or Jakari and Colvin and Lawyer. Sorry, there we go. It was offense defense with Colvin and Lawyer. And if it was after a timeout, then I definitely don't understand, but I also don't expect Purdue to make that mistake.
Right.
But I think it was live ball, and Colvin it was just the defense rotation was in, and Colvin just kind of panics. And I understand Colvin trying to give it up, right? Not the best dribbler. He's also he hasn't attempted many. He's 56% from the line in his career. Like, he hasn't been good from the line, but at the same time, I'd rather Colvin just shoot free throws than let Oregon do what they do. Because Oregon's, I mean, I've tweeted about this a few times, and Oregon just wins games, and that they're down late. Like, 8 of their 15 wins, they had less than a 33% chance in the second half to win. They're just a team that needs to start. Like, they should just ask the team. They should just fast forward 30 minutes, start down 8, and they probably win the whole thing.
Not this time.
Yeah, Jason Depew saying my play of the game was Cam not flinching and drilling the 3. Certainly a big one in the game. And you always like when you see a guy that doesn't hesitate and knocks it down, which for me, I know the coaches on the sideline didn't like it, but when Raleigh pulled up for the 3 and airballed it, I didn't hate it because he didn't flinch. He took it. He was open. I thought he was going to knock it down. Then he airballed it. And the coaching staff was not happy because it was just one of those moments in the game where you're like, hey, Oregon's making this a dogfight. You start to, open it up a little bit, and then Raleigh airballs it. But I liked the confidence, but maybe not the decision.
But he's taken those all year. Like, he's just got to know time and place. The first one he attempts, it's fine, right? Like, they let him shoot those. They are fine with him shooting those, but time and place. And that was not the time or the place for him to try to take that shot.
Yeah, you know what? That's what they all say until they knock it down, right? So, but hey, I get it. You've got, you're the 5th option on the floor there of 5 guys. So maybe try to get it to your stars. That's what they're there for. So,
but in Raleigh's defense, it was in I think the very first time he got rotated into the game. He had 2 back-to-back really nice defensive plays. One of them he comes over and helps, and the guy sees him late when he's trying to go up, and he ends up traveling. And I forget what the other one was. I think he just walled up and forced a really difficult shot. So not the best 2 threes to attempt in the world, but he had an impact in the game when he was in there as well.
Yeah, Jason Depew, $1.99 super chat, following it up here after his play of the game, saying, love the content, guys. Follow and like all. Appreciate you very much, Jason, for your support to the show. Hit that like button, ladies and gentlemen. Purdue Boilermakers have won 7 in a row as they return to Mackey Arena for 3 games in a row. I mean, how many times do you really see a 3-game straight home stretch, during a Big Ten schedule? I feel like that's kind of a rarity. So maybe that's kind of the new adjusted look of Big Ten schedules now, when you have to make West Coast trips, and it looks like from the schedule maker standpoint, they're going to have you knock out both games while you're over there, which, obviously I think everybody would appreciate that. I didn't get to catch Cronin, the UCLA's coach, complaining about travel. I don't know, Kraig, if you want to shed light on it. I saw the caption to the tweet, but I didn't listen to him complaining about it. Do you want to explain to me what he was saying?
He wasn't directly complaining about necessarily the travel to the East for the 2 games. It was when they came back. I think they had to play in like a 2-day turnaround or something like that. Which when does Purdue play? Purdue plays Tuesday next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a 3-day turnaround for them. But I think he was saying hey, you got to give us West Coast teams a little bit more time when we get back. But the schedule's not always going to fall that way. And Yeah, I've
Well,
got thoughts, but my
the
biggest thought is Izzo has some competition in the Big Ten for the biggest whiner in press conferences now.
The other thing he was complaining was Iowa had been in LA for like 5 more days than UCLA at that point. Obviously, it didn't matter.
Yeah, it did not.
Yeah. So, well, I look forward. UCLA comes to Mackey Arena this year, so that'll be fun to see them come to West Lafayette.
It'll be fun. I don't know that I'm looking forward to playing against their defense, but it'll be fun.
It'll be cool to have a team like UCLA. I mean, they did play at Mackey Arena during the March Madness tournament a few years ago.
Their Final Four run.
Yeah, on their Final Four run, right? When there was the adjusted scheduling because of COVID and all that. So it'll be interesting. What's that?
It just as important. Like, we talk about this 3-game home stretch now. I know, Joe, you and I, when we were looking at the January segment of this calendar, and like, this is a stretch that Purdue should win a lot of games, and we should see Purdue start to climb back in Kenpom and the net and AP rankings, everything else. They've got to accumulate wins in this stretch, because as we turn the page to February, things heat up and get a lot more difficult. But we were saying if Purdue can go through January with only 2 losses, now they've made this West Coast swing. We've got 3 games to end this January segment, and all 3 games are at home. Now, Michigan's going to be a really challenging game. Can't overlook Ohio State and Indiana, but there's a real good chance Purdue finishes January undefeated as they turn the page into February, and then they're positioned really, really nicely to pick up the next Big Ten championship and get a high seed again, because there aren't really bad losses. There's like maybe 2 or 3 games in that February-March stretch, but most of those games, even if they lose one, it's not going to be a bad loss. They've avoided all of those.
Yeah, I think, right, like the rest of their games, the losses that would maybe be considered bad are home against IU, home against USC, and home against Rutgers. And even then, like, Rutgers and USC have shown life, and IU flip-flops daily at this point. There's some, you're right, there's no Washington losses, there's no Minnesota losses. It's also really the only, at this point, super bad losses in the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm with you. And Purdue has got through this stretch where, and they got a favorable schedule, 4 of their road games at Minnesota, at Rutgers, at Washington, at Oregon. They have 7 of their last 12 at home. And there's some tough games in there, don't get me wrong. But this, we kind of, right, I feel like we sectioned off this 6-game part of like, hey, go 4-2 at absolute worst, most likely get 5-1. You're looking good. This next 5 games, home against Ohio State, home against Michigan, home against IU, at Iowa, home against USC. 4-1 in there, and you're looking really good to set up, like, give yourself a chance at the Big Ten title. I think that's kind of, obviously the goal is 5-0, but 4-1 is kind of like my barometer, I guess I would say, over this next 5-game stretch.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And you saw yesterday Ohio State, IU beat Ohio State in overtime. Ohio State came back down 10 right at the end. Today Wisconsin beats USC. I'm not sure if there was any other games going on during our game, but it just, but to my point, and then Michigan, they lost, right? What was that, last night?
Two nights ago? 3 nights ago?
2 nights ago to Minnesota. And Casey Bartley tried to tell Kraig, but Kraig just wouldn't listen. I saw you guys' interaction on Twitter. I thought I'd have fun with that. But regardless, the point is, yeah, they could go 3-0, but you can't take anything for granted, and I think we all know that kind of goes without saying, but it's the truth. Throw the records out when IU and Purdue play each other. They're not having the best season, but when they play Purdue, it's like their Super Bowl. We know how that goes. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys do and see if they can take advantage of this stretch at home now that they've, done themselves a favor here to start 2025. So a lot of fun here. Not sure where you guys want to take this. I know you mentioned you had something else for the board, Joe. I don't know if you want to go there or if we want to
go to that as kind of a transition and then maybe get to some like stats and stuff like
that.
Yeah,
some individual stuff after that.
I don't know that we even have to, like, we've already rattled off all the stats. We just didn't pull up the
talking a little bit more about the players.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So this play, I've seen Purdue try it a couple times, and I don't know if it's a set play or if it's more of just how the offense breaks down. I don't have a great name. It's something I'm going to look up after the show, but I believe it's called a dead corner. And so basically what it is you'd have something like this where like Lawyer has the ball, or Colvin has, maybe, I don't remember who it was. This could have been Colvin or CJ Cox. I don't remember. Where like he has the ball, you're trying to get the ball to TKR on the post. It doesn't happen. And you make this skip pass to this empty corner and you throw it all the way over to first. And so then as that happens, Braden's coming off and getting this handoff. And I believe he turned it and got downhill and got to one of his jumpers. And right, it's not super complex, right? It's not like one of Painter's, 5,000 step sets that they run, but I like it because you get this skip pass to kind of this dead corner where nobody's at. Defense, right? If they're playing defense, they're probably playing defense something like this, if they're right. And so now if you can make this skip pass, there's kind of like, based on where the defense is, you kind of have this whole area to kind of work with. Now Braden can come off a handoff, first can roll. You could even get TKR a little duck in. So just this dead corner, I don't have a better word for it. I think it's called a dead corner handoff, that little skip pass to over here. I've seen them go do it a couple times. I don't know if it's going to be a consistent theme, but it was just stood out as like hey, I wouldn't mind seeing that once or twice throughout the year.
Little wrinkle for sure. Little wrinkle. We got a $9.99 super chat jumping in here from Adam Marvel. Appreciate your support. Gritty road win. Purdue Pacific Northwest opening soon. Absolutely. I mean, the fans showed out. You heard the whose house, our house chant to end both games in Washington and at Oregon. My daughter certainly was enjoying the floor. The floor at it doesn't look as bad, right? It's not as crazy as it used to be, right?
I like it. Just straight up. I think it's good.
I like it too, but I like it now more than how it was.
Yeah.
Like the other splash pad they had was just a little too much for the eyes when you watched it on TV. So I'll give them that.
Yeah.
So
I do think the fans definitely deserve a shout out in both of these games. And like, I guess I never realized how many Boilermakers were on the West Coast, but when you think about it, people started replying after the Washington game, like what industries and what companies are out there on the West Coast. It makes sense. And you can kind of tell they were probably hungry to be able to get to a game to be able to see their Boilers play, because man, I don't know how many that were there today, whether it was the same type of proportion, but you could hear it coming through the broadcast multiple times, especially down the stretch of that game. And kudos to you guys for traveling and going to those games. Those of you that are out there, because it's been really impressive. And I'm sure it's something the team absolutely loves.
no question about it. No question about it. Purdue fans travel well. They showed that all. They've shown that for a long time here, but certainly last year they were showing it. They're showing it once again here this year. So shout out to all the Boiler fans out there. Joe had to jump out. I think he's been having like ghosts. You see like this ghost popping up on his screen. So I think maybe he was trying to fix his video. I don't know what he's doing.
I thought he was just trying to send subliminal message to children or something.
But what?
No, not that. Not that.
What? I'm going for 2 seconds. What just
not like that. Jesus.
My audio and video got
That's
out of
not what
sync,
I
so I
meant.
was just reloading while we transitioned. I don't know what just happened in the 3 seconds I was gone, but that's all that was happening.
That's not what I meant.
Of course. I have no idea. Like, I didn't even know how to play off of that because I was like, that was a curveball. Oh,
Let's
man.
get into
that was
players.
funny.
How about
Yeah,
some players? Let's talk about TKR. Obviously, his impact on the game. He was the leading scorer on the game. I think more importantly, just rebounding, right? And you study that. You look at his stat line. What's he end up with? 6 or I can't. It's a little small. Either 6 or 5. 6 offensive rebounds, 5 defensive rebounds. That's huge, right? And I mean, something that was a big detriment towards this team for a lot of the year. And they've really turned that around lately. I don't remember the last time that they were beat on rebounding, or I should say beat by more than 1 or 2. It's been at least pretty close to even over this stretch. But monster performance for him on the boards. He did struggle going against their bigs. That's a very fair statement. He ends up 5 of 15. He gets blocked a couple of different times. But he didn't let that affect him in terms of impacting the game, and he kept getting to the free throw line. And can't say enough about him going 9 of 9 from the line. I mean, if he shoots his normal 50 whatever % in this game, it's a completely different game going down the stretch.
Yeah, and I find myself because I won't. I like here's the thing, and I'm not afraid to say it here on the show. And Joe knows some of the texts I've sent him early in the year. Like I'm pretty critical of Trey Kaufman-Renn, and there's something about him that and I said it on the last show where I kind of set you guys up. I'm like, do we not appreciate them enough? And I should have probably framed the question, do I not appreciate him enough? Because I guess my expectation of Trey Kaufman-Renn is that he's not supposed to make any mistakes. And, and he's not supposed to have any flaw in his game because he does so much. And yet I'm always just looking at what he could have done more of. And so in this game, that's another example of that where I'm like, man, he only I have no idea what happened there.
That wasn't me.
Yeah, maybe it's me. Who knows? This is going off the rails all of a sudden. But I will say this about Trey, and this is with all due respect to his game because he's got game in bunches, but he only goes right. And so it's interesting to watch him try to be effective by essentially having one move that they know he's going that way. And yet there's times where teams just can't stop it. But then today it felt like they knew what he was trying to get to. And how many blocks did Oregon have? A lot of them are on. And is it normal for most of your blocks to get the blocks on the bigs? Because I feel like our bigs get blocked a lot. And maybe that's just something other teams have that same issue. But for me with Trey, it drives me. There's times where if he just drop steps off his left hand, he's got a wide open layup, but he just has to go right. And it's interesting to watch him try to figure that out and then still be effective and still end up with a stat line like he had. So again, I'm trying to be critical and have all due respect to understand that he is a very good player, but you saw Edey develop that drop step and go off his left hand to end his career. And I'm just hoping for him that he's able to find the comfortability to be able to do that, because then I just think his game is going to go to a whole nother level than it's currently at right now, which is very good.
Yeah, and we saw it I feel like we saw it once in this game where he did get to the drop step, but it's the same. I feel like we said the same thing about Edey, probably his junior year, especially, where it's just the drop step looks like there, but for whatever reason, there's just not a comfort, or they're just so confident in getting to that right hand. Yeah, I honestly thought Oregon did a good job on him, especially with Biddle. Just not letting themselves get bullied, even Brandon Angel when he was on him. But then also being there to be able to contest. And it was an interesting back and forth for me, process wise, because it's right. TKR was not great in the post, but at the same time, this game was so grimy and physical and grinded out that it's I was almost just well, you kind of just almost have to live with it, because I don't know what else you're always going to get. And at least with that down low, more often than not, I know you're going to get at least a decent look and you can match the physicality. He got some putbacks, but at the same time, the drop step was there a few times, and maybe it's something they'll catch on. They'll catch it on film, I'm sure, but maybe it's something they'll bring up during film, and maybe it will be a point of emphasis. Maybe Painter doesn't it's just no, keep going to the right hand. I don't know, because you are right. You watch the game and it looks like it should be there.
Yeah. But to your point, in a grimy game like this, and also Purdue was just killing him on the offensive glass. So,
yeah,
even if he's missing those short, first or himself, just kind of grabbing that offensive rebound was killing him. And when you're not hitting from outside, and I thought the other thing, Mike says against a good tall center, I would have liked some good outlet passes to 3-point shooters. The problem was Oregon was staying with our guards on the perimeter, so they weren't sending a whole bunch of help. The lane was clogged at times, I thought, a little bit today. With Caleb in there and kind of the other big being able to kind of sit down in that lane at times a little bit, but they weren't really doubling, right? They weren't sending a hard double, so their guards were staying at home. So I really didn't think that kick out was there all that much today.
No, you're right. There was a few times where they spread it out. Trey Kaufman-Renn gets it. He's waiting to kick it, and they're telling him, we're going to let you go one-on-one. So it's interesting, I guess, from a scouting, if you're trying to reverse engineer this and look at it from the other team's perspective, stay with the shooters, let Trey Kaufman-Renn go one-on-one, but set your defense up knowing that he is 1,000%, 100,000% going right. And then figure out how you can trap him to create that low shooting percentage that you saw today, right? Like I think they almost executed that plan well. The problem was they couldn't find the buckets on the other side of the court.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Bragg. You just told everybody how to beat us.
I'm sorry. Well, Painter knows. Painter's on top of things. He'll get it fixed. I don't know. Like I said, I've been it's like to a point where I know I'm being hard on Trey Kaufman-Renn. Like, cause I'll text Joe things like where I'm just being an emotional fan during the game. But he's shut me up like as the season's gone on. There's no question. So I just find it interesting. And somebody said it. I think Steve Tater Swingle said it here, which is a great name, by the way, Steve. But he said something along the lines of, he adds in one thing where he says Trey Kaufman-Renn's right hand is like a pitcher with a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, but also with a good curveball. Whenever in a tough spot, a pitcher wants to go with his best pitch, and that's true. Like I said, Randy Johnson's great at fastball. Keep throwing the fastball. So I totally understand that sense. And like I said, it's one of those things where that's what makes him so good. He's going right. He still goes right, and he still beats you more times than not. He still ends up with the stat line he ends up with. And I'm still complaining about the 10 other buckets he could have made. But then what am I expecting? Him to drop 30 plus every game? That's essentially what I'm saying. So it is interesting. And I understand that, it's one of those things where he comes back, and, he's now the guy that takes over for Edey's role of last year. And so I'm spoiled of offensive efficiency around the rim. And I'm not used to the grind that it used to be before we had Zach Edey. And I think that's also part of the subconscious.
It seems like for TKR at this point, you either get good from the field or you get good from the free throw line. And today was good from the free throw line. That's where he got his efficient 9 of 9 is nuts. Like, he is a career 60% free throw shooter. That is insane to go 9 of 9. I'm hoping this isn't going to be tiny. We're going to find out. Oh no, it fits nicely. So this is Kenpom's Player of the Year. Kenpom, the most used, I would say, analytical site for college basketball. They have Kenpom Player of the Year ratings. Now, no Purdue player is going to compete for the Player of the Year. It is Cooper Flagg's to lose, especially with Janai Broom's injury. Those are a 1-2. But if you look through the top 10, there's 2 players from the Big Ten, and they both just happen to be on Purdue. And I don't know if both end up All-American or anything like that, but there is something to, like, Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn have been awesome this year. They just have. And you can still demand more from them because they are that good. But seeing both of them in the top 10 the year after losing Edey, like, this whole team was supposed to be Edey made. And Braden Smith and TKR being 2 of the best players in the country.
And then the other thing I'm going to say too, and maybe this is me just trying to pull at strings of trying to find compliments, but it's one of those things where I think on this show, we emphasize the nuance of the game, maybe more so than another show. And for years, people used to really undervalue just how important it was to have guards that were under control and like throw it into the bigs cleanly. And it was something I feel like a lot of fans here took for granted. You don't realize how important that role is where you have guards that could get it into Edey. Everybody just acts like it's a foregone conclusion. Oh, well, he's the biggest guy in the court. Get it into him. Not all guards have the composure to consistently get it inside without turning the ball over. So the same thing can be said in terms of nuance with Trey Kaufman-Renn and Caleb Furst for that matter, of just how important it is to have guys that set good screens when you're playing with a guy like Braden Smith. And you can say, well, that's just a simple, you learn that at the elementary school level. Yeah, but to do it that consistently with a guy like Braden Smith that's maneuvering the way he is, and you never know which way he's going to go. There's times where TKR or Caleb have to set 3 different screens at the top of the key to start the offense. And it's not easy. You saw at one point where they called the offensive foul both ways on each team. And, those are the kind of things where you can turn the ball over in a pivotal moment. So I'd just like to point out that, those guys do a great job of setting those screens for our guards to get our offense set up, to get Braden Smith going downhill. And you can say that's nothing, but wait till you have guys that don't know how to do that consistently, and you'll understand just how important that role is.
Yeah, and especially with today, like Oregon putting TJ Bamba on Braden, it gave Braden fits for a while, and they kind of figured it out towards the end, and some of it was just getting Bamba off of Braden. But physical size, like that means like Bamba, right? He's 6'5", 220. You do have to screen well, and that's where you saw the 3 rescreens in a row, just trying to shake free. And yeah, screening super important.
Yeah, and to your point on TKR, and just a little bit more here, Greg, with like it's frustrating today, right? Because you look at his field goal percentage and you're like, man, he only shot 35% from the field. He really struggled, but his true shooting percentage on the day is 48%, right? Which factors in free throw total points, it factors in free throw attempts, all of that. So you combine all those free throws that aren't getting counted as field goal attempts and the points that came from that, and his shooting percentage from that standpoint was decent today, at least. But
well, and another 10
minutes.
Right. And one more thing real quick before we move on from TKR, but another thing too, when Braden did the fake shot bounce pass to TKR, that was a hard pass to Corral, and Trey caught it cleanly and laid it in. Oh, that was another play of the game to me. Great, amazing pass, threading the needle by Braden, but an even better job of Trey Kaufman-Renn with the soft hands to get that and get the easy bucket. So yeah, let's move it on. I know we're getting to the end of the show here.
What you got on Braden Smith, Joe? Go to town.
It was, I mean, we can pull up. Oh, is this? Look at that. It doesn't show the turnovers on here, so I'll say those manually. But Braden had, I should have had this pulled up.
He had 5 turnovers.
5 turnovers, but he did have 4 steals. He did have 7 assists, 15 points, 5 of 15 shooting, 4 rebounds. In a game where shots just weren't falling, and given his shot died, those games are going to happen. I still don't walk away being like, oh man, this is a bad Braden Smith game. Like in even a year ago, I don't know if we say that. If Braden goes 5 for 15 with 5 turnovers, I would, I would be pretty confident just chalking that up as like, yeah, that's just a really bad game from him. But he just continues to still find ways. Now, was he great this game? No, he was not, specifically on the offensive end. But you can still see him work through things. And like I said, Bamba gave him fits for a while. And I think he started figuring that out towards the end. You see eventually they do get some of the short rolls to TKR. He does get a couple middies to go late. He kept firing. That's a big thing too, right? Braden puts up 18 shots or 15 shots in this game. And 2 of them came somewhat late. Like, how many times in the past have we been like, Braden, keep shooting. I don't care that you're 3 for 12. And in a game where he wouldn't keep shooting. And he did that today. So you're still, even in this not being a great game, like at least on the offensive end, he still figured out ways to kind of adapt, manage the physicality, and still help will Purdue to a win. And then defensively, he was good. Like Purdue has done this for 2 years now, right? You bring in Lance Jones. Even at the beginning of the year, they started Jakari. That's obviously transitioned to CJ at this point. They've never put Braden really on the primary defender or ball handler. Braden, I think he's fine, like at point of attack defense, one-on-one defense. Like, I think he's fine. I don't think he's elite there, but he is just so smart and so quick off ball that he's put in those spots so many times that he's just able to basically read where the pass is going, and then force steals that way. Or what? I know the one play specifically, he fought hard I think it was Angel had him posted up, and he fought hard to get around, and he forces a steal. So these are the games where, right, Braden Smith struggles, but you still walk away with positives. And obviously you want him to make more shots, but in a game where he didn't have his A game, you still are like, hey, it really wasn't a detriment to this team at all.
Oh, and he had some of the biggest shots at the end of the game to keep it, the lead extended enough for them to come away with the victory. So he continues to make winning plays at the end. So, honestly, the way this game kind of rolled out, when you look at how they shot from 3-point land to a 12, and then from the free throw line, it's kind of the way they used to win 2 years ago, right? Like it was one of those kind of games. And so, it's we've been a little used to a different way this year, but in this 7-game winning streak, like somebody said it in the chat earlier, they've found different ways to win, and that certainly is the mark of a good team. And they're certainly starting to find themselves, because I think if you had read off some of these individual stats, whether it's 2 of 12 from 3 or some of the individual performance you saw from this game, I don't think you would have predicted that they would have come out with a victory with some of those things in mind, but they did. So that's a huge credit to them, and a huge credit to their defense, which we've certainly tried to lean on here today. So I was surprised to see when you brought up that stat sheet that Camden Heide had 9 points. I can't remember where it was. He had a few from the free throw line.
He hits the 3. He gets an offensive rebound and put back. That's an and 1. So there's his 6 right there. And then he got fouled late, which gets him to 8. I don't know where the 9th point comes from, but I mean, it was definitely a good offensive output from Cam. Ends up being the 3rd leading scorer today. And, we've been big on like Cam's got to take that 3, and he just needs to see a couple go through, and he was successful in that endeavor today. This was a really, really hard defensive matchup for him. And when Caleb got in a little bit of foul trouble at different times, so not really foul trouble, but Painter was trying to protect him to make sure he doesn't end up in foul trouble that was going to be detrimental. They kind of went right at Cam pretty quickly, right from the jump, as soon as he came into the game with their bigs whenever they could. And he struggled a little bit there, but a really nice offensive game for him. And he also pulls down 4 rebounds in this game. So, yeah. And
I know you brought up just the impact that CJ Cox had on the game. How many minutes did he play?
15. CJ, Jakari, and Miles all played 15 each.
Yeah, because I mean, for CJ to have 15 minutes in this game,
14.
And like you said, where it really did feel like he was effective. They weren't really running any kind of offense to try to get him something, but he still found a way to like have an impact, and he was in the fight. And as you pointed out a bunch here to start the show, just how well he was doing of a job defensively on the perimeter. It's almost somewhat impressive that he was able to put up all those goose eggs offensively, but stay in the game and be effective in that way.
Yeah. And I think late in the game, somebody said, why didn't CJ come back in later? I think Painter trusts Jakari more right now, handling the ball against pressure. And so I think that's just why Jakari's in there late down the stretch a little bit more.
Yeah, we can look at the rotation here, and I'm going to throw in the caveat of like the last 5 minutes is so offense defense, like it's just kind of a hodgepodge. But no, I agree with you. I think CJ's handle is better at creating separation in the half court, but I think if you're just specifically looking to handle some pressure, bring the ball up and things like that, I think Jakari's is a little bit better suited for that at the moment. You also just get into Colvin. I didn't think Colvin played well the first half at all, or really that well. And then that second half, and I know what Colvin, he doesn't make it. He only makes 1 point, goes 1 or 2 from the free throw line. He only has 2 rebounds, but it felt like he impacted the game so much more than what the stat line shows, specifically in the second half. And so you see him get that big run, and he was in a little bit for the last few minutes. I don't have it marked just the way that things broke out, but I think Jakari specifically was in just for handling, and also like I know CJ isn't like, I know they're like listed at the same height and weight, but it just feels like Jakari's a little bit stockier to me. And so if you are concerned about switching onto TJ Bamba, like right when if CJ doesn't have the shot going, both of them are capable ball handlers. Both of them are very capable defenders. At that point, you're just kind of going for literal little things that make the difference for who plays. CJ probably could have been in there and it would have been just as fine too.
Mike Garrett jumping in on the Twitter side of things saying, thought both Heide, Colvin, and Cox made a big impact rebounding. Good to see Colvin going after boards. And when you looked at that minute breakdown, I'm sorry to cut you off, Kraig. So if you have a thought to bring back on him, just bring it back on me. So I apologize for stepping on you there. But when you look at that minute breakdown and you see Colvin, you know, having the chunk of the minutes in the first half and the second half in pivotal stretches, right? Like, it just takes me back to last year where you wouldn't really trust him for those longer stretches in a game like this. And so they even ran a play for him coming out of a timeout. He doesn't knock down the jumper, but it rims out. It was a good attempt. but just overall, and I agree with Mike on him, when you talk about his athleticism to help on the boards, he had a big rebound at the end of the game, and so I just am impressed with watching Miles Colvin's maturation, and the hotter he can get offensively, the more he's going to continue to develop.
Yeah. Now, all I was going to say was I think you could really kind of lump CJ, Jakari, and Miles all together today in terms of their games. Like, none of them had a real good offensive game. They all did some really nice things defensively. And Painter just kind of rotated them based upon, what he thought he needed impact-wise during those different segments of the game. I thought Oregon did a really nice job kind of shutting Fletcher down. In that first half, he gets a few pretty wide open looks from three after the little shot fake sidestep, that he certainly could have knocked down, but they made life difficult on him. When he kind of comes off that pin down and then curls for the dribble handoff and gets downhill a little bit, they did a really nice job of kind of shutting the water off on him on that today, I thought.
No question about it.
No, they did.
Yeah, we're starting around third here on the Boilers in the Stands post-game show. Please hit that like button while you're hanging out. If you are watching on Twitter or if you're watching on Facebook, we appreciate your viewership as always, but it does help us if you head over to the YouTube end of things and follow the program on there, subscribe to the channel, and hit the like on the Boilers in the Stands post-game shows. We're here at live after every game. These guys do a fantastic job with their previews before every game. Maybe one of these days we'll do an in-week show where we try to fit in a player or someone to come on. Bobby Riddell has been off the hook all year with us. This is starting to get ridiculous. Like, I don't know who he thinks he is big timing us this year, but I'll tell you what, if Bobby doesn't join the show at some point, and I'm going to be there at Mackey, I'll probably have to just threaten him personally, because I was at the Cubs convention yesterday and I was talking to the guys from Locked On Cubs, and he told me, his name was Sam told me that Bobby DMs him all the time talking about Cub stuff. And I was like, oh man, I haven't heard from Bobby in months. And so now I'm offended, and I'm going to be taking that up with him personally at Mackey Arena on Tuesday, unless there's the lightest of snow. And then I will not be driving to Mackey.
It's supposed to be like -15.
It is supposed to be like -20. As long as it's -20, that's fine. As long as it's negative, as if there's no kind of rain or snow, it can be negative whatever. That's fine. But I refuse to get on I-65 if there is even the slightest bit of precipitation, whether it's snow or rain. I refuse.
Fair enough. I wanted to, because I know we have a bunch of comments to get through, and we appreciate everybody supporting and interacting with the chat and making this show what it is. I did just want to briefly go back, because specifically with Jakari, he played 6 second half minutes, and so I'll pull up the rotation here. He didn't play much of the second half until late. He comes in and goes 5 of 6 from the free throw line down the stretch.
Yep.
That isn't obviously you should just make your free throws, you're a college basketball player, but at the same time it's a little easier said than done to kind of, I know he wasn't cold at that point by the time he was shooting free throws, but I guess he went 3 of 4 from the free throw line in the second half. And everybody shot pretty well, right? Lawyer goes 1 of 2. Also, and I started the comments. I can try to go find it. The lawyer, there was 100. There it is from Chad P. When Bardo said that Fletch had hit 21 in a row, I screamed at my screen, "Bardo, why would you mention that?" I was watching with my girlfriend, and as soon as Bardo said that, I was like, "Yeah, Fletch is missing this free throw. There's just no chance that he doesn't." And look at that, he missed the second. So shout out Bardo for forcing Purdue to miss the second free throw from Lawyer. But sidetracked. Just wanted to credit Jakari for knocking down some important free throws down the stretch.
Yeah, the game does not look too big for any of the freshmen, really, but certainly CJ and Jakari are settling in a big way here. And as their offensive game continues to develop, they're just going to be fantastic players. And the same can be said for Raleigh Burgess. You can certainly see the skill set and the frame that he has from a physicality standpoint that is required at the Big Ten level. So let's run through some of these starred comments. And then I'll get to football. I know somebody in the comments said that I'm trying to run off to football, and they're not wrong, but it is a good game. Chiefs are up 13-12 in the late in the third quarter, but I got it on right in front of me. So I'm cheating. I am watching the game while I'm trying to pretend like I know what I'm talking about with these two fine gentlemen who are very, very well equipped to give you all the details when it comes to Purdue basketball. And that's proven if you watch their preview shows, because all I ever hear is how they're calling it time and again on these preview shows. And they do a fantastic job knocking those out week in and week out. So shout out to you guys for your hard work. Chad P saying hot take. I kind of like their court now that they've toned it down. I think we should cover the Mackey floor with trains.
I would like to see the
tracks?
train logo come back in general, but
what if the sidelines were train tracks?
kind of like the football. Doesn't football do that?
Yeah, football does that, right?
I don't know. I don't watch enough football games.
I believe they do. Steve Tater Swingle, which is my new favorite name in our chat. All due respect to everyone else in our chat, but it is great. Steve Tater Swingle says, Harris and Cox won't impress the box score watchers, but they did a lot of what coaches want from guys who aren't top options. That's certainly the program that Matt Painter is built here for Purdue men's basketball in West Lafayette, no doubt about it. Jason Depew, should have Biddle's fouls on Miles been reviewed for flagrant in your guys' opinion? I mean, he certainly took him out, from behind, swiping underneath his legs, and that's a dangerous spot for a player to be in.
I was surprised.
Isaiah, go ahead.
I'll just, because if Isaiah said something that's just more knowledgeable than what I'll say, I'll just say I was surprised they didn't look, at least, just because like Biddle did not make a play on the ball whatsoever. But I'll let you go, Kraig.
Yeah, no, Isaiah tweeted something right after that basically, like, if the officials aren't going to look at that, do they actually care about player safety? Like, flagrant fouls are supposed to be protecting, because that's what it's supposed to be about. This is all the way the flagrant fouls are set up now. It doesn't really matter about intent that much in terms of if you're trying to hurt a player. But if there's contact to the head that's excessive or whatever, it can be a flagrant one. There was no play on the ball and takes his legs out. I definitely thought that should have been reviewed.
Yeah, having not watched Oregon too much, I mean, I watched a little bit of their game with Illinois, but I was not expecting the physicality that they played with today. I didn't realize that that's their brand of basketball, but they, right out the gate, I mean, I was texting you guys how they were mauling TKR in the first couple of possessions, and there was no foul called. And then one play later, they literally like punches TKR in the face, and they got the flagrant out of it. But it was way more physical this game than I thought it was going to be going in.
Yeah,
so,
no, it was.
Yeah. Moving things along here. Mike Hofferth says TKR may have had a bad matchup. Mark. What did I say?
Mike
Hofferth. TKR may have had a bad matchup taking it at Biddle, but his fight on the boards was impressive. No doubt. Him and Caleb, you can say what you want. When they miss shots, get blocked, but they don't stop. Their motor never stops, and we appreciate them. Sydney is yelling at me, better bring Joe his sweatshirt, Braggs. I got it. It sits right on my table for literally 9 months now, and I've kept it safe, and I look at it every day and realize how much I miss you guys. Brad Prather jumping in here saying, Painter said in his comments a month ago, we aren't winning this. We just aren't. And before we came on the show, Kraig said to Joe, 2 months ago, I would have never thought we'd win a game like this. I don't think you said that at any point today here on the program, but it's funny that you and Painter both had the same thought.
That's why I started. And I think Joe and I both tweeted something relatively similar to that at the end of the game. So it was neat, reaffirming seeing Painter say the same thing, basically. But yeah, this team has found different ways to win and just flip the script.
No question about it. It's fun to watch, as it is every year watching Matt Painter-led Boilermakers basketball team. So TD Ransford, Boiler fans turned out again, no doubt about it. Mark, don't call me Mike Hofferth, says it shouldn't be understated the importance of having Jakari help close out games. Does a good job of handling the ball and knocking down free throws. Joe pointed that out as well. So a good observation from Mark. KMKV6 says, as a California Boilermaker, I am definitely happy. I am definitely enjoying being able to go to regular. Just let me get through this, damn it. But KMKV6 says, as a California Boilermaker, I definitely am enjoying being able to go to regular season games. Made it to San Diego this year, but looking forward to more next season. Certainly, Boilermakers taking advantage on the West Coast. Happy for all of them. Tamaz J, who's been very active in our chat here today, appreciate you hanging out, says, honestly, First could do almost the same as TKR if he got the same amount of touches and shots. Almost anyone with Braden will put up big numbers. Braden certainly puts his bigs in good position to make plays. Dave H.
Hold on. I think Joe wants to say something.
I want to, and I don't enjoy that we're kind of ending the show with this. I strongly disagree with this. Like, First has been better. First shots come at the rim. TKR has been phenomenal from the paints and from kind of that 10 to 14 kind of foot area. This isn't like a shot at First, because First has been awesome. I've been big on First, but First does not have TKR's touch really either at the rim or outside of 5 feet. Maybe First could do it. Maybe First could put up a little bit more if he did get a few more touches, but TKR, like the Braden Smith TKR pick and roll, specifically with TKR in the short roll, is like the only thing that pops into my head that's better offensively right now is the Wolf Golden pick and roll for Michigan. Like, that's the only thing that immediately pops in my head, is like, that's maybe better. It is again, this is not a shot at First, and I don't think First would take it, because First has done phenomenal in his role, but TKR's touch outside of 5 feet can't be just like pushed to the side.
And we made sure not to push it to the side, thanks to you, Joe, as I tried to push it to the side to move this along as we enter the fourth quarter of the Chiefs game. But no, it was well said. Dave H says, love this channel. Thanks for the catharsis, guys. Appreciate you as well, Dave. Salty B with a $5 super chat says, shout out to Ghost Joe and his inappropriate mess.
I did not, for anybody that just tuned in, did not have that. I disappeared for 3 seconds and the show went off the rails. You can't let these two by themselves, I guess, for 3 seconds or more.
Normally it'd be me saying something completely off the wall, but this time it was Kraig. Casey Bartley says, there just happens to be a regional hosted in Indy this year. I'll book the tea time at Purgatory now, Joe and Braggs. You can be cart boy if you want to come, I guess, Kraig. That's very nice of you. I am happy to go out and see what Joe and Casey are all about on the links. I do have to have knee surgery to start the month of March, so I don't know if I'm going to be. I know it sucks, but
the other knee.
Yeah, the other knee. So Salty B says, my first super chat. We appreciate all of you guys and your support to the show. Yo was asking as I was stumbling through some of these reads, is he drunk? No, I'm just an idiot. I'm not drunk. I'm just very stupid. And
it's the fact that, like, you're not mispronouncing a word. Like, you look at a word and you just replace it with a completely different word sometimes. And I'm like,
because I'm not actually, I read the first 3 words and then I just interpret the rest of the way. That's essentially what's happening here. There's times where, I'll read a text from some of my coworkers at CHGO and I'll respond to it, but the answer is actually at the end of the text, but I just read the first 3 words and then immediately respond. And then I have to send another text where I'm like, and my question is now answered because I have a reading problem. So anyway, that wraps things up here for today's show. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Shout out to all of you guys for hanging out with us. Please hit that like button on the way out. We'll be back here on Tuesday. These guys will likely have a preview show coming up for the Ohio State game. But regardless, we are here after every single game. For home games, give us a second to get set up because typically we're at Mackey Arena getting things going. So if all 3 of us are at the game, there will be a bit of a delayed start to us getting set up and getting the post-game show underway, but we are here for you after every single game. So we appreciate everybody hanging out. So thank you to Kraig Bowers, as always, for your contribution. And of course, Joe Jackson, You guys do incredible work, and we'll continue to give you guys the content you're looking for, Boilers fans. So like I said, enjoy. What do you want? What do you want, Kraig? Because
Joe, when we gonna have a preview show out, Joe? We doing it tomorrow or Monday?
Probably tomorrow is my guess.
Okay.
That's
preview
right.
show. Look for a preview show to be out tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Enjoy your football. The Lions play tonight. I know no one cares, but that's the only thing I'm worried about right now is the future head coach of the Chicago Bears to see if anybody can live up to what Matt Painter's doing for my Purdue Boilermakers, but I highly doubt that'll ever come to fruition. But a man can dream. All right. We'll see you guys here. Thank you for tuning in. Hit that like button, all those good things. Enjoy your weekend, and always, Boiler up.